Hey there, everybody. I'm Jesse Weber, and welcome to our continued live coverage of the Sean Diddy Combs federal trial out of New York. We are officially in verdict watch right now in the trial. So jurors were sent back to deliberate a short time ago. This was after they were read the jury instructions in this case, the lengthy jury instructions in this case. Remember, this is basically the law that they're going to follow. I want to give you a little bit of an update on what they were read and why it's so significant moving into this. But I do want to let you know that for the next 2 hours, we are going to be taking your questions about this case as we wait for a jury verdict. Probably unlikely they're going to come back today with a verdict, but who knows? I've been shocked before, could be shocked again. So we're also going to take your questions, submit them, we'll answer them. I have an all-star panel with me to go through it all, but I want to let you know about what's going on with these jury instructions. So, of course, the Judge Arun Subramanian, went through all of the elements of all of the charges: racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, transportation to engage in prostitution, but arguably the most complex is racketeering conspiracy. And for instance, the judge said the government is going to have to prove that there was a mutual understanding to cooperate in a criminal enterprise, one that the government says that Sean Combs led. They can infer that. Actions speak louder than words, because you're not going to have, an example. By the way, this is a shot of what the jury deliberation room looks like, because you're not going to have them all, evidence of them all signing a contract to engage in or agree to engage in criminal activity. Was there an inferred agreement? And this was really interesting, talking about the 8 underlying predicate crimes that the government has to prove at least 2 within a 10-year time frame. So there's bribery, arson, forced labor, kidnapping, drug offenses. And I thought this was interesting. I want to call this out. The judge said that witnesses who were given immunity in this case, they should be examined with greater care than ordinary witnesses. We know that there were a number of witnesses who testified under immunity. That witnesses who were permitted to testify under pseudonyms, for example, Mia, for example, Jane, that bears on your evaluation of their credibility. That the defendant had no responsibility to testify. You can't attach any significance to that. In other words, because Sean Combs chose not to testify, you can't use that against him. This was interesting as well. Voluntary intoxication may actually negate the intent requirement of the RICO predicates. We'll talk about what that means. Uncalled witnesses. For example, Christina Coram, whose name came up, every single day with almost every single witness. These people who were mentioned but never called as witnesses, each side could have called them. That's what the judge said. Don't speculate or consider this. And then finally, when they were sent back to deliberate, the judge said, the schedule is your own. You're going to be provided meals. They've begun their deliberations. And if they want to continue past 5 p.m., they may be able to do so. We're going to keep a very careful eye out and ear out if we get any juror questions or what's going to happen. But right now, I want to take your questions. So I am joined right now by celebrity criminal defense attorney from McMonigle, Perry, McHugh, Meshach, and Davis. Brian McMonigle is with us. We're also joined by criminal defense attorney Mauricio Padilla and Law&Crime's very own host of scandal outside of the federal courthouse right now, Sierra Gillespie. It's great to have you all here. I said all-star panel. I wasn't lying. Sierra, I'm going to start with you because we got a super chat question from Diana YX3GU. Thank you so much for the super chat question. Does the jury return home at the end of the day, or are they sequestered in a hotel? What do we know, Sierra?
This is a really great question, because especially when it comes to a trial like this where so much is on the line, huge stakes for P. Diddy. I mean, if he's convicted, he could spend the rest of his life behind bars in prison. So we want to make sure the jury is paramount. So that is a question. Could they be sequestered? Will they? Won't they? And the answer is they will not be. They were not. So every night after, the whatever happened in the courthouse behind me, they listened to all the testimony, went through the evidence, wrote in their notebooks, and then got on the subway, took a train or an Uber, walked home wherever they went, and that was their night. So over the weekend, this is something I've been thinking a lot about, Jesse. Over the weekend, after we heard closings from both sides and the rebuttal, they went back home to wherever they were going. So to me, I'm thinking it's got to be going through their minds, right? They're going to be thinking about what they heard on Friday, and really throughout the entire case so far, I'm sure it's kind of been in their minds as they're leading into deliberation. And as it continues, by the way, they'll still go home tonight once everything's finished. If we're still deliberating tomorrow, or they're still deliberating tomorrow, I should say, they'll go home. No need to stay in a hotel or be sequestered.
Yeah, if I had to take a guess, unless they were close to a verdict today, I think they're going to want to go home by 5 o'clock. I don't believe that we're coming back with a verdict today. I think this case is so complicated. They have so much material to go through. I think this is going to take several days. Maybe we'll put up a poll. Maybe we have a poll up about how long we think the jury deliberation process is going to take. Let me bring back in Brian and Mauricio. Brian, you ready for this? We got a question from @Leon the Spesh One. I don't blame Leon the Spesh One asking this, but what's RICO? What's RICO, Brian?
Well, it's a statute that's existed for decades, and it was created to really shut down organized crime. But it requires precisely that: racketeering, a racketeering enterprise, a conspiracy to commit racketeering, and you need, as is reflected in the statute itself, a criminal enterprise. So the first thing the government has to prove that there was a criminal enterprise. The second thing they have to prove that criminal enterprise engaged in at least 2 predicate acts that had been highlighted in the indictment of the many that were highlighted. And they've got to prove those acts beyond a reasonable doubt in furtherance of the conspiracy, which is the racketeering. And if the government's able to do that, then this gentleman's going to spend a long time in prison. And if they're not, as I suspect they might not, he could be acquitted of these charges. But, it's interesting because this statute long ago was created to deter organized criminal activity. And now we're seeing it in cases like this with wealthy individuals who have the money and the means by which to get together with other people and sometimes commit criminal acts. So it'll be interesting. To me, it's a very significant test case for the racketeering statute.
I agree with you. Look, the prosecution's narrative is he had these assistants, he had these bodyguards, they knew exactly what was going on. They knew exactly what was happening behind closed doors. They helped set up the sexual events. They helped clean them up. They were instrumental in the kidnapping. They were instrumental in forced labor. They were instrumental in drug distribution. They were instrumental in bribery. He couldn't have done it alone. Defense's perspective, and we heard it from the defense's closing argument with Mark Agnifilo, who did he conspire with? You didn't hear one person talk about a criminal enterprise, say they were part of a criminal enterprise. Christina Coram, that's the co-conspirator. She's not a co-conspirator. And I think it was interesting because Mark Agnifilo had said, if it was John Gotti and Sammy the Bull was the co-conspirator, you think people are calling Sammy up for help? I mean, because the idea was that the alleged victims were calling Christina Coram up for help. So it raised kind of an interesting question there. Mauricio, I go to you. We got a question from LaRob Show 6300. Question is he cooked on the Mann Act charge, so that's transportation to engage in prostitution, or does he have a shot? And overall, what's your gut feeling on the rest of the charges? More likely conviction or acquittal?
I'm thinking more likely conviction when it comes to the Mann Act of transporting, persons for the sake of prostitution. I don't know. I think they have them dead to rights. I've heard a lot of testimony about a lot of people that were directly engaged in it, and that came out through multiple witnesses. And I think it was something that he wasn't really worried about, because I don't think, and I've said this on various occasions, I don't think P. Diddy was as conscious as he should have been about the fact that a lot of the things that he was doing were illegal. So I know that there was a lot of testimony regarding airplane tickets, credit card charges, different assistants that paid for these prostitutes to fly in from other states. So I think when it comes to that particular count, and I think it's a good question, I think they got him dead to rights on that one.
Yeah, and this is not to blame the defense, because I thought they did a really good job. They don't really have much of a defense to that. I mean, they can't argue that they weren't prostitutes. That was abandoned, okay? And no, let me rephrase. That was excluded during jury instructions. It only matters if men were transported and there was a completed commercial sex act. So they can't argue that. And the idea, well, how is he supposed to know that's a crime? How is he supposed to know that's illegal? Porn stars can be paid for sex work. Feels a little bit of a stretch. Anyway, put that to the side, because again, you have the text messages, you have phone messages, you have Amex receipts. It's a problem for the defense there. Okay, Sierra, how about this? Got a question for Merlene Spies, 8354. Jesse, I've wondered about Diddy complained about the way Jane Rosenberg depicted him in drawings, the courtroom sketches. Did he have access to see the drawings? Because remember, she said he thought he looked like a koala bear, right?
Yes, that is what he said. I personally didn't see the whole koala bear thing, but I mean, you guys, we're all our own worst critics. So I'm sure that Diddy was looking at them under a finer tooth comb than you or I are looking at them. So yeah, Diddy definitely was able to see them. And I do think too, we saw some change in the style of these courtroom sketches after we heard that bit of a complaint. And I don't know, I think it just says something interesting about P. Diddy, that that's also something he was concerned about during all of this. I know that his image is obviously very important to him. He's facing some pretty serious allegations, so I don't want to necessarily say that his image is completely tarnished, because again, these are allegations and innocent until proven guilty. But we have the civil side of things too, so he's had some pretty heavy allegations weighed against him, and one of the things that's important to him is how he looks in these courtroom sketches. I think it's interesting, but hey, I go back and look at these live streams and say, oh, my hair looked terrible, or my outfit was terrible, or whatever. So I can understand it in a way that he was upset about it. But yeah, he does have access, and he did see some of the courtroom sketches.
Yeah, somebody once took my teeth and put it on an animated orange. That was frightening, to say the least. We all.
Oh God.
Had been, yeah, it was. That was pretty scary. I tried not to think about that, but unfortunately, I just remembered of it. Sierra, stand by. Got another question. We got all these questions coming in. Let me go to. Let me think about who I want to. Yeah, Brian, I'll throw you this one, and then I got a good follow up for you, Mauricio. Brian, we got this question from Antoinette Gregory from 7311. Jesse, you're fabulous, and we're going to miss you, Queen Lizzie. So kind. Everybody's been calling Elizabeth Millner Queen Elizabeth. I'll make sure to tell her that. But Brian, what is the likelihood that the government will go after Christina Coram next? As I mentioned, she's been brought up almost every single day by almost every single witness. Sean Combs, purported chief of staff, the main co-conspirator, alleged co-conspirator, not brought as a witness here, not charged. Is there a chance they will go after her?
I think there's a chance. I would be stunned. I mean, if they were going to make that move, they should have made that move a long time ago. And I think a lot is going to depend on this verdict. If they swing and miss on RICO and they swing and miss on sex trafficking here, the last thing in the world they're going to do is bring another prosecution. So I would doubt it for sure. And I would be surprised if they did bring such a prosecution. But clearly, any decisions along those lines are going to be predicated on how they do here. And I think this is going to be a challenge for them to get this RICO conviction.
Let me just follow up, Brian. I mentioned in the jury instructions how they said, the judge said to the jurors, if there were uncalled witnesses, each side could have called them. Don't take anything from that. Don't use that in your deliberation process. You think they're actually going to follow that?
Well, they do that for a reason, so nobody can curry favor with the jury in saying, well, they didn't call so-and-so, and they have the burden of proof, and they didn't call so-and-so. I don't know that that's really going to matter at the end of the day to this jury. This case is going to rise and fall on the issue of coercion. As we talked about in the very beginning in this case, this is a sex trafficking case that involves adults, not minors. A RICO case that involves a celebrity instead of a mafia boss. This jury is going to focus on whether or not these young women were coerced into criminal activity. They're going to look at their text messages. They're going to look at the many things the defense has exploited during the course of this trial and come to a decision as to whether or not we're really dealing with coercion in the true sense of sex trafficking. And the problem with Diddy, on the flip side, is some of these predicate acts are easy knockoffs for them, including the prostitution charge, including some of the intimidation charges. So it's going to be an interesting jury watch.
Yeah, I wonder, when you look at transportation to engage in prostitution, you look at bribery, you look at maybe arson, kidnapping, you could make the argument that some of these feel stronger than the others. It is an interesting question, and they really have to go through each one of those, which is why I don't think you're getting a verdict in an hour, unless, of course, these jurors have already come up their mind and they're not really looking at the facts and the evidence, considering what was in front of them for 7 weeks. I hope that's not the case. There should be a significant deliberation process to really get at the heart of what's happening here. Mauricio, let me go to you. Let's go talk about it. This is from Heather Stein, 4575. How long do you think deliberations will take? Hours, days? And remember, we got the July 4th weekend coming up.
I think In almost every high profile case that I've done, I think that the jury knows that everybody's watching. So even if they have made up their mind, I think that they make it a point to show the world that they're giving it the importance that it deserves. So I would, I'm saying minimum a couple of days, because there's been so much evidence that they're just not going to want to go in there, take a vote, and then say, okay, we're going to convict them. I will be shocked if they do that.
Well,
so I think at least a couple of days.
Before, you think they're, okay, do you think they're going to hold off and not come with a verdict until after July 4th? They're like, we got to get out of here. We got to go home.
So we have today, tomorrow,
Tomorrow,
right?
and the next day, and then what, Thursday, right? Yeah, Thursday, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that they could come back before the July 4th. At the end of the day, listen, it's a long trial, but they've been sitting through it, so they don't have to regurgitate piece by piece every piece of evidence. But in my experience, even the ones that you think are slam dunks, when the media is involved, and especially at this level, I mean, this is as high profile as you can get. Everybody's watching, and the jurors really want to show the world that they've really done their work, and they're taking the case seriously. So, could it be before the 4th? Maybe, but I definitely think that they're going to take a couple days.